Hello, everybody. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, and I'm so excited to continue my series of the best films of the decade. Now it's time to go through the films of 2018. That's right. There were a lot of films this year. Overall, a pretty good year, I would say. Not my favorite year. This one was actually probably, out of all of the years, the hardest one to put in order. My top film was easy, but every other film was really hard to put in order, and perhaps because it's still recent. As I've been doing this series, I've been having a lot of fun putting the orders, and some of them have been easier, and some of them have been harder. This was the hardest list to make, and that's part of the reason it's got delayed, just because I couldn't figure out the order. I don't know if I still will stand by this order a month from now, but look, these are the 10 films I liked, and I put them in order because I've done that so far with every other chapter, but let's get to it, shall we? Number 10 on my list, the way I'll work this through is I do the top 10 films, but before I get to my top 3, I will go through a bunch of films that I really liked but didn't make the cut, and some films that you might have thought should have made the cut, as well as my worst film of the year. So let's get to it with number 10. This film, I liked this film a lot. This film did get snubbed at the Oscars, and that film was Won't You Be My Neighbor? A much better Mr. Rogers film than the new one. What's the Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood starring Tom Hanks? That's what. Look, I like the Tom Hanks film. I like parts of it, and I really like Tom Hanks. But if you really want to go back down the stroll through memory lane and remember how important and why Mr. Rogers is who he is and why we should still be remembering him, especially in today's times, this documentary does a beautiful job. Directed by Morgan Neville, it's just a really good telling of his legacy, how radical he was, but just a legend worth remembering is really what's so important about Mr. Rogers. When I was a kid, sometimes the pacing wasn't always for me, but every time I would sit and watch, and my dad, big fan, always made me watch, I always learned something, and I always appreciated it. And then as I grew older, I realized the importance, and I just appreciated it even more having my own kids. And I think it's easy for kids to sort of get stuck with all the loud noises and flashes and bright colors and everything. But Mr. Rogers, what he was doing, he was really just talking to the children in a way that no other adults were, doing it in a respectful, kind way. The importance of kindness. There's this moment where he just talks about how children have really deep feelings and the fact that he really understands them and talks to them at their level. It's so admirable, and it just shows why he's why his vision of kindness and love, it was so important and something we need more of all the time. It's a really wonderful story to learn more about the man behind the character, even though you realize he really wasn't a character. Sure, he had his own family issues and things that he was going through himself, but everyone goes through struggle, and that's sort of the beauty of Mr. Rogers, is you learn his own struggles and his need to be kind and spread that kindness throughout the world. And just there's a quote he says at the end, or in the documentary: "The greatest thing that we can do is to help somebody know that they are loved and capable of loving." It's just a beautiful film. It's a beautiful documentary of a subject that deserves to be remembered and documented. And now in this year, especially with Mr. Rogers and the film doing well, this is the one I think we should be remembering. Now, granted, Tom Hanks does a great performance. I would have loved to have seen more of Tom Hanks in that character, in that role, but this documentary is by far the better film, and I highly recommend it if you haven't already watched it. All right. Coming in at number 9. Look, this one did really well. I really enjoyed it. I know a lot of people did too. Some people might go, really? The best of the year? Given some of the ones you're going to skip. But I really enjoyed it. I got to give it props. And that was Crazy Rich Asians. Look, I like a good romantic comedy when it's done right. And this one felt fresh. It felt funny. There were twists. There were turns. I was invested. I liked the characters, the supporting characters. It was relatable. It was adorable. Serious. I really liked the film. I liked everyone involved. Constance Wu, I thought did a great job. Henry Golding, and a really great turn by Michelle Yeoh. And then even Awkwafina and Ken Jeong, really funny supporting comedic characters. But I remember just watching this film and I had a smile the whole time. And I also just saw how important this was for representation. But beyond that, it was just a really fun, well-made film. And that's, to me, is when you can get representation in a film that's actually worthy, funny, relatable to all, races, size, shapes, everything. Crazy Rich Asians delivered, and I think deserved all its accolades. And I look forward to the sequels. We'll see if they're as good. But either way, I think it stands alone as a standalone film, a wonderful romantic comedy, great actors, and it was worthy of the success that it got. I really enjoyed Crazy Rich Asians. John M. Chu, great job. Everybody involved in that film, really wonderful. Next up, something you might expect more on my list, but something that I thought was very underrated and didn't get a lot of the props that it should have. This was a really cool original action film that not a lot of people saw from Blumhouse and Lee Wannell, who did Saw. If you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend it. It's called Upgrade. Not man, not machine, more. This character, he's sort of like this like Tom Hardy light. I say that with love. But this actor, Logan Marshall Green, he plays this character who's like a technophobe. He hates technology. And so an accident happens and it forces him to sort of be rewired and reprogrammed with sort of cyborg pieces and an upgrade into his brain. And so suddenly at a certain point, it's a computer chip they put in there called STEM to sort of control his limbs and stuff. And it really takes over. And there's this point where you realize he starts hearing this voice in his head. It's just this turn in the movie. It's really the best way to describe it is RoboCop meets Venom, where he's got to work with this computer voice in his head. And there's this really great moment. It's in the trailer, so not really spoiling it, but you should maybe mute this while the poster's up and watch it fresh if you want to. But there's this really great moment where the computer chip sort of kicks in and he's like, I need permission to operate independently. And he's getting beat up by this guy. And suddenly he's about to get killed. And he's like, I need permission. Give me permission to operate independently. And then he's like, fine, I give you permission. And then the robot takes over his whole body and just... It's this amazing sequence. And then when it's all said and done, he's like, you now have full control of your brain. It's this really crazy concept, but really cool. And it's sort of a cooler, upgraded version of RoboCop, but with those elements of Venom and Tom Hardy that I really liked. So Upgrade, I think, just got lost in the shuffle, but it's a really worthy action film if you haven't seen it. Great job from Blumhouse. I loved it. Amazing visceral action. If you like Dread and those types of movies, definitely make sure you catch up on Upgrade. It's a really fun movie with twists and turns you won't see coming, and just violent action sequences, but also fun and a really important, interesting message about this sort of where is technology going? Where's the line? What would you do? What would you give up? What will machines do? All of it very fascinating. I really enjoyed it a lot. Upgrade, number 8 on my list. All right, coming in at number 7. This movie was weird in the best way possible. I really debated even putting it on my list and then I watched it again and I enjoyed it more and I realized, okay, there's a lot going on in this movie. I got to give it respect. And I really like its director. He's fantastic. Ari Aster's Hereditary. Toni Collette gives a stunning performance in this film. Basically, if you haven't seen it already, it's hard to sort of describe without getting too much into it, but the log line, I would say, is it's a family haunted by a mysterious presence after the death of their secretive grandmother. It's the best sort of thing I could find and explain it. But it really is just sort of about what secrets could your family be hiding. Think of the worst nightmare version of that, of what's hereditary in your family. And then it really pushes these ideas of what's real, what's not real, what's in your mind. It goes in these dark places that you just don't expect it to, and it doesn't turn into your typical type of horror movie. It really goes in these weird, crazy directions that require multiple viewings. But the acting, the cinematography, the originality, it's a lot of really cool stuff going on in this movie. I really enjoyed it. The last act is just weird. But I appreciate that it was going somewhere and they do attempt to answer things and whether you like it or not, they do. But a fresh, interesting thriller horror film that deserves its respect. Hereditary, number 7 on my list. All right, then coming in at number 6, another odd but very original film. This one came from Boots Riley, and I know a lot of people didn't really check it out, but they should have. It's called Sorry to Bother You, starring Lakeith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson, and Arnie Hammer. This is a weird movie. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It follows this young black telemarketer, and he's adopted this white accent to succeed at his telemarketing job. And so he's swept into this whole like corporate ladder climbing and conspiracies, and ultimately decides, does he want to make, all the bank and get up the ladder and succeed and beyond his wild expectations? Or does he want to, become an activist with his friends and join this union group? It's really just dark story. It's like this science fiction comedy, but it's really about race and identity and telemarketing. It's a very weird but funny, surreal, and incredibly original film. The ending of this movie is just bonkers. And at first I was just like, what am I watching? But the more you sit with it, the more questions I ask, the more I wanted to watch it again. I really love when a film can just completely challenge me, take me to places I haven't been before, with wonderful actors, and this film does it. And it really does ask some questions. And it's really well shot, well edited. It just felt like something new. And when a fun, entertaining, bonkers movie can entertain me, it always gets high on my list. So sorry to bother you. A very original film from 2018 that I highly recommend if you haven't seen it yet. It's just wacky. And I really like Lakeith Stanfield. I hope we see more of him in the coming years. Wonderful actor. He's great in this. And I love David Cross as his. It was David Cross as his white person voice when he's selling the telemarketing stuff. Really fun movie. Check it out. All right, now coming in at number 5. I love it. I feel like a radio DJ. This one was originally higher on my list, and then I just came down. But it probably should still be higher on my list. I'm still debating. These next ones are all great. These top 5 are fantastic. I really struggled to order these 5, so except for number 1. So take this as you will. Don't put it in blood. Just all 5 of these really I recommend. Ultimately, I thought, what are the ones that are going to be remembered the most in certain ways? As time goes on, I tried to step away from, just a year ago or so and really think what's going to last in 10 years are the ones I'm going to still talk about. And this one is going to stick with me for sure, but I thought the other 4 might do it more. So coming in at number 5, really, 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 really liked this movie. This movie surprised the hell out of me. And I know a lot of people haven't seen it. It just showed up on CNN as their documentary series. And I highly recommend you checking it out if you haven't already. It's called 3 Identical Strangers. Now look, I don't want to tell you much about this film. You should just go see this film and just watch it unfurl and see it the twists and turns because I just didn't see it coming. I didn't know what this film was about, and I had just had a blast. And then I just scratched my head, and then I was really like, "Whoa! I need to make sure someone else watches this movie so we can talk about this movie because it's fascinating." But there you go, the most amazing, incredible, remarkable, true story ever told. The film follows these 3, directed by Tim Wardle. It follows these 3 identical triplets that were separated at birth and adopted by 3 different families. And then years later, this reunion becomes this global sensation all over the news, media. They become celebrities because they're 3 identical strangers. But then something else happens, and the story progresses in a way that's just very thought-provoking and challenging and serious. And look, I'm trying not to tell you too much because if you haven't seen it, go see it. Don't let me spoil it. Don't go read about it. Don't be that. I mean, do what you want, but I'm just saying if you want to enjoy this, do it like I did and go in blind because I loved it. I was just at the edge of my seat wondering, okay, because I knew there was someone was going to go somewhere, but I couldn't have predicted where it was going. It was really, really strong. Go see 3 Identical Strangers. I know CNN was repeating it for a while. It was on TV. I don't know where you can find this on streaming yet. I think it might be on Prime, Amazon Prime. So go look it up if you have it. Go watch this one. This is a fascinating documentary that also got snubbed. This and Won't You Be My Neighbor should have easily been in the best documentary that year at the Oscars and didn't. So I highly recommend you check out both of them. But 3 Identical Strangers came in number 5, very close to being tied. At one point, this was number 2, then number 3, and then number 4, number 5. I really did struggle with these top 5. But coming in at number 4, another film that immensely surprised me. I watched this on a plane. And typically, I would say, don't ever do that. But this film sort of worked on a plane because half of the phone is on an iPhone or a laptop. And it sort of made it almost more special. And I went into this film not expecting anything. I had heard people had said, it's good, check it out. And then I went sort of, all right, I'll try it. It was sort of felt like, all right, I'll just watch this on the plane. Downloaded it, had it on my phone. It's a pretty big screen when you put it up close. But I didn't expect to love this movie as much as I did. And it really rocked me. I was edge of my seat the whole time. At one point, I cried. I really, really was shocked by how much I enjoyed this film, and did not get nearly the respect that I think it deserved. And that film is Searching, by Anish Chiganti. Sorry, I probably butchered your name. But starring John Cho. It's this movie about this father whose daughter goes missing, and so he opens up her laptop. and her social media and her phone to sort of figure out, well, where could she be? And so the 16-year-old daughter goes missing. The investigation is not really going anywhere. And 37 hours have gone by, and he learns that he sort of needs to figure this out quicker or else. So he goes where no one else is gone, which was the laptop, checks out the social media, figures out her friends, and really has to find her, trace her down digitally. And it unfolds in this way that felt very realistic, relatable, interesting, done. Yes, it's a gimmick, but actually the storytelling works in this format in a really surprisingly good way. And I got very invested. It's very just heavy and sad, and you don't know where it's going to go. And again, not a movie I want to spoil by any means, but I implore you to watch it, see what happens. It's just a really cool format. John Cho gives a fantastic performance, and much more intense than I thought it would be. As a dad, I felt for it. It was adventurous, rough, hard to watch, but worth the watch. Check out Searching, a very underrated film from last year that I think deserved a lot more credit. And again, number 4 on my list because it stuck with me. It still sticks with me. It's one of those films that I was just completely surprised by, entertained, moved me. That always are the ones that get the points to put it up higher on my list. And so Searching, terribly underrated, but worth the watch. Check it out. Don't know where you can find these, but I'm sure you can. But this came from Sony. And check it out when you get a chance. Go in blind. Let me know if you watch any of these films, because I'm suggesting a few that I know weren't on a lot of people's lists. So hit me down below on social media and tell me which ones you like, or if you haven't seen them, and what's your list. Now it's time to go to my top 3. But before we do that, I'm going to go through some of the films that almost made the cut, some films that you might have expected to get the cut that didn't, and I'll tell you why, as well as my worst of the year. All of that after this break. All right. Hopefully that mid-roll ad played. All right, here we go. So we're back with our top. Before I get to my top 3, we're back with a bunch of movies that almost made the cut. All right. The Oscar that year, this was a tough Oscar year. I didn't love a lot of the Oscar nominations, to be honest. But the one that did win, I actually did enjoy, and it was Green Book. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's just a white savior movie. I didn't see it as that. I thought it was a really interesting historical piece, sort of driving Miss Daisy in reverse. Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali, wonderful performances. I went in expecting to really just be like, whatever, but I was really invested in the journey. I thought the two of them gave great performances. It almost made my list, but ultimately it just didn't. But I do recommend the film. I liked Green Book a lot more than other people did, and amazingly done by Peter Farrelly of Dumb and Dumber fame and all those movies, Something About Mary. Surprising he pulled this off with such emotional heft. So I give it props to him. Almost made my cut of all these movies. And then the other one that almost made my cut was A Star is Born. I really did like A Star is Born. I think Bradley Cooper gives a fantastic performance. Lady Gaga's good, but Bradley Cooper's movie is the best, and the music is unbelievable. But I've seen this movie before. I've seen it before. I've seen it better. I liked Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges. It was also a film on my list. I've seen the movie before many times. And while Bradley Cooper slayed it and the music is amazing and Gaga's good, it didn't ultimately have enough for me to really want to watch it again. I'd rather listen to the soundtrack again than watch the movie again. And so that's why A Star is Born didn't make my cut. I really liked Black Panther. I know some people it's polarizing, but I thought a really wonderful, great movie. Michael B. Jordan is fantastic in it. Shuri is such a great character. I just had the third act does get a little silly near the end, whatever, but still, I liked it. I liked a lot of it. I thought it was a brilliant way to introduce the character and Wakanda and the costume designs, visual, all of it was so wonderful. Makeup, everything. You just felt like a new place hidden underneath that sort of invisible cloak. I really enjoyed Black Panther. I also really liked Bumblebee, a movie that not a lot of people, by Travis Knight, I think, right? Who did Kubo and the like stuff. Bumblebee surprised me. Haley Steinfeld is a great performance, and it's a great movie with kids. It felt like an old PG-13 movie from the 80s. It takes place in the 80s, but it had that sort of scare factor. It just felt fun, risque slightly, but hands down the best Transformers movie by far. And it was the first one I showed my kids and introduced them, and they were into it. Bumblebee is a good, fun character. I really liked Bumblebee a lot more than a lot of people did, and I think it didn't get enough due. It was a really good, smart way to reboot the franchise, but didn't ultimately make the cut. I also enjoyed Venom, but it's not a great film. It's not a perfect film, but I liked lots of parts of it, but that was on the list. Wasn't going to make the list, but at least I want to mention. And Bohemian Rhapsody. Look, I know it's got a lot of drama behind it, but I thought Rami Malek gave a great performance. And yes, there's some editing problems, and it is a typical biopic, musical biopic. But I was engaged. I thought it was fun. I thought Queen's worthy. I wish they would have gone a little darker, heavier in some of the drama they really did in their life, but for a PG-13, I think, right? Anyway, for that type of more safer biopic, I do think Bryan Singer did a good job. Who knows how much he actually did? It's unclear. Because of the whole mess of it, it just ultimately did sour the film, sadly. But I still liked it. I'm going to give it props. I think it was better than a lot of people said. And then Annihilation, another interesting sci-fi movie from Alex Garland, who did Ex Machina with Natalie Portman. Really weird movie. I watched it again and definitely answered some questions, but it didn't stick with me like some of the other one and some of the other films, so it didn't make it, but I liked it. Eighth Grade by Bo Burnham. It was good, but I've seen better coming of age stories. Yes, I appreciated sort of its awkwardness and everything, its originality, but at the end of the day, I didn't connect to it as much as I usually like those types of movies a lot. I liked it, but I didn't love it. Roma. Look, I respect it. Beautifully shot. It just overly long, felt very. It was clearly a personal project, and for Cuarón and Alfonso Cuarón. And look, it's beautifully shot. Everything. It's just never a movie I need to watch again. It just felt like a very expensive vanity project. And while I appreciate elements of it, hard to watch, and just because it's emotionally heavy. And again, not one I needed to see again. But Roma was on a lot of people's list that year. And then Black Klansman by Spike Lee. Definitely his best film in a while, but I didn't love it was John David Washington, Denzel's son, who plays lead. I didn't think he was that great. I did like Adam Driver a lot, and I for the concept of it, I wanted it to go a little bit more Tarantino and sort of change history a bit and make it a little fun or do something with it. It just for as clever as the concept and as the marketing was, it ultimately just became, I don't know, it wasn't my favorite film of that year. I did enjoy watching it. I think it's good performances, and Spike Lee I like seeing him back in this format. But something about that film always sort of stuck out as not my favorite. And then Ralph Breaks the Internet, didn't like it. I love Wreck-It Ralph. Ralph Breaks the Internet just felt like, hey, kids like the internet, right? Let's do a bunch of YouTube stuff. And then same with Incredibles 2. I liked it when I saw it, but as I sat with it, it's a mediocre sequel. You can tell Brad Bird came back because they sort of made him, and it wasn't as good. It wasn't as good. I love those characters, but I was sad that I didn't love that. I want to watch it immediately following. Creed 2, let down. They went full crazy Rocky with that, which was so frustrating because they built Creed so great, and then Creed 2. Look, I enjoyed parts of it. I'm not going to lie. It was still fun to watch, but it was like a bad Rocky sequel. It was not nearly the level that Creed 1 was. And then Deadpool 2, also not as good as the first one. There were definitely funny parts, and I enjoyed a lot of it. It was fun, but rewatchability on it was not as good. It felt like it was starting to crack. The gag is up. I need something more. But look, it's still funny. But I don't know. It wasn't as good as the first one. Mission Impossible Fallout, I did enjoy, but I didn't enjoy it as much as Rogue Nation. I know a lot of people liked Fallout. Not my favorite, but that's not. I'm doing my mediocre list, but Fallout was a little step better mediocre. Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. A lot of people said it was better in that it's tried to do something new in the second act, where it becomes this horror movie in this mansion. But man, it made some weird choices too. And then that beginning where the whole Jurassic World island Nubalar just goes under a volcano. I didn't like it. And the other one I really didn't like was Mary Poppins Returns. Really disappointing. Love Emily Blunt. I was looking forward to it. Rob Marshall does, I think, good musicals. And that one just, I can't sing you one song from that movie. How is that possible? How did they make those songs and not make one catchy song? They're like, oh my God, I got to sing that song again. It blows my mind how bad that music was. And that's part of the movie. It's cute near the end, has some high budget, looks good, but couldn't get into it. And then as for the worst of the year, I have Solo here, but it's the worst movie because it's Han Solo. It didn't need to be Han Solo. It should have done a new space adventure and gotten all the Easter eggs out. It's a serviceable movie, but after all the hype and Lord and Miller it's just, I don't know what kind of movie it is. And then the other movie that I didn't even watch, but I know it's the worst of the year based on everybody, is Gotti with John Travolta, but I didn't watch it, so it's not the worst of the year. The worst movie of the year for me was The Happy Time Murders, starring Melissa McCarthy, directed by Brian Henson. I went in like, this will be fun, like a puppet movie with raunchy stuff. And oh my God, I didn't laugh. It was just so bad. No one was in the theater, so I went on my phone. I was so bored during a couple parts. There's like one or two, It's really, really, really awful. And Melissa McCarthy, man, how the mighty have fallen. Great in Bridesmaids. She does some other great stuff. But man, she's starting to really become a parody of herself, and it's sad. I like her seeing it more when she tries to go more dramatic roles and stuff like Saint Vincent and the other one she just did. Anyway, this Happy Time Murders, it's a disaster. All right, but now time to get into the top 3 of the year. And like I said, these 3 were tough. The first one was easy, but the next 2 and the last 2, this top 5, 4, 3, 2 were tough to order. But ultimately, I decided to put number 3, a big movie, Avengers Infinity War. Look, I'm struggling with this because it's not a full movie to me. It's still part 1. But then the more I sat with it and I've rewatched it a few times, it is really fun to rewatch. There's some really great sequences. I love Tony Stark meeting Doctor Strange and everything. I do like the snap. It's a strong movie, and in some ways it might even be better than Endgame. But the ending isn't finite. It just doesn't have that. It has an ending where it snapped, but then that's not real. Clearly, it wasn't real. That said, it was ballsy. Thanos is fantastic in the movie. There's a lot of really good parts. And as movies hold up, I do think these 1-2 part Infinity War Endgame, look, it's the Marvel fanboy in me, I guess. You could blame it. But I was invested in these characters. I thought they did a really good job. And while there's parts of Endgame that we'll get to that next year, and we'll get that soon when I do my 2019 list, and we'll see how far that makes it up the list. And I think it will make the list, but we'll see. Still debating on that order. But in the meanwhile, I wanted to cement to 2019, and I do think Infinity War is a pretty solid movie. And like I said, in some ways, might be better than Endgame, but for different reasons. And for the fact that it has sort of a darker ending, and it has some really cool sequences, and it introduces a lot of these characters together to have some fun. So for all those points, it's number 3 on the list. I like it. It has a rewatchability factor, but you do sort of have to watch this with Endgame. It's a long night though to watch those 2 back to back, but Infinity War does hold its own, and it is worthy of for 2018. It's a worthy movie. That snap, the dusting, we'll be remembering that for a while. People will be making fun of that for ages. But the film that I thought was just a better film beyond Infinity War, the movie that I thought just did a better job at being tense, setting up a world, acting, edge of my seat, commercial success. A Quiet Place. Man, it was really good. Really good. Really, really, really good. I saw one of those shaky seats, my girlfriend and we were both just at the edge of our seats. And the fact that John Krasinski not only directed this beautifully, but was able to finally make me not see Jim from The Office. It was such a success. And it was just so nice to see him and Emily Blunt working together in this film that just was really intense, really scary. This new idea that was so simple but brilliantly done. I really liked it. That scene in the bathtub where she's pregnant. Whew! And then everything's falling apart, and she's got to scream to give birth. It was just what a finale. And then the fact that they commit to that ending, and I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it, go see it, but that they commit to the ending and everything else, it really holds up. And I'll be honest, The Quiet Place 2 coming out only cemented the fact that I was like, man, Quiet Place 1 really was good, really strong, really heartbreaking opening, other moments throughout. I was invested. I thought it's really intense, fantastic performances. I got to give Quiet Place a lot of props. And just because the commercial success, the fact that it is so well done, puts it up higher in the list to number 2. That said, the number 1 choice was not hard at all. But all those other ones right below, those were hard to order. All those films I think are fantastic films that deserve to be seen. And Infinity War, still debate, should have been a little lower. But I just think from an iconic standpoint, it deserves to be on the list. And I do think it'll be remembered more than a lot of these films if we really step back 10 years from now. But the one film that out-superheroed that film and to me just out-movied all movies was one I think it really so far might be the best animated film I've seen. And that is Spider-Man and the Spiderverse. I mean, when I say best animated film, I just mean literally the best animation I think I've seen in a film. It is stunning. It is gorgeous as a piece of art. It is just, you can just see all of those creators, just their blood, sweat, and tears on every frame of this movie. It is just so beautifully done. And then beyond just the animation, that's just the highest level you can imagine. It feels like a comic book. It feels, and then not just from a look, but from a heart, from a standpoint of just a beautiful story with characters that have arcs and you care about them. Oh my God, it's such a beautifully done movie. I would say, dare I say it, potentially a perfect film, I think. Wonderful cast. Shamik Moore as Miles. Jake Johnson gives a great performance as Peter Parker. Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy. John Mulaney as Spider-Ham. Nicolas Cage, come on, as Noir. And Mahershala Ali and Lily Tomlin. It's just a really wonderful cast. All those people really make their characters feel like live-action characters. And it's just so well-rounded, well-written, relatable characters, emotional arcs and growth for the characters. Music. I mean, Post Malone's Sunflower, what a beautiful use of that film. Became my song of the year. My kids and I have played that so many times. It's just such a perfect piece of music for that film. And just this idea of, for kids, for adults, for everybody, this idea that truly anyone can be Spider-Man and actually make you believe it by the end. And just as a parent and as children, it hits you. It hits them both. I remember my kids were emotionally affected. I was emotionally affected. What a beautifully done movie that just really hits all cylinders and hits you right in the heart. The best Spider-Man movie, hands down for me. Potentially the best animated film, I think, just from a technical standpoint, and easily the best film of 2018 in my eyes. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was wonderful. I cannot wait to see what they do next. And just, I love the fact that Lord and Miller had been fired from Solo and then had this project they were producing, and it's Miller, right? I sometimes get the mistake. Phil Lord wrote it with Rodney Rothman, directed by Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman, who also wrote it with Phil Lord. And then Miller produced it with him, I believe. But the fact that they lost the gig on Solo and then had this movie still brewing, and this movie ended up winning the Oscar for Best Animated Film over all the other films in Pixar, etc., Disney. Wow, just so awesome. It's such an awesome thing to be able to. Sorry, yeah, Disney, you tried to own us. Yeah, well, we had a better vision, and Sony let us go. It's beautiful. It made me happy inside. Like, wow, what an awesome creator story. You get kicked down, but you can still lift back up. Spider-Man, man. Anybody can be Spider-Man. Anyone can just have that inspiration. Into the Spider-Verse. I cannot wait to see more. I hope they continue this franchise. I'd love to see it mixed with the live action at some point. What a beautiful way to sort of one-up Marvel, the year of Infinity War, with the better superhero movie easily, and take Spider-Man your own way without having to need them. Whoever made that and was in charge of that creatively better be stripped and put into charge of Spider-Man, because they just got it. It was so well done. So easy one for me of the best of the year, Spider-Verse. There you have it. That's my top 10 of 2018. I hope you enjoyed the list. Cannot wait to share my best of 2019. I finally just caught up on all the films. I'm prepping my list. You'll see it this week, so stay tuned. So thanks for watching these. If you haven't, go check out the rest of my best of the decade. You can go back and relive all these movies. And like I said, please go down below. Tell me what films you think I missed. What would be on your list? Obviously, this is subjective. This is my videos, my choices, but I'd love to hear what yours are too. So leave me a top 3, top 5, top 10, whatever, down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with more content very soon, so be sure to subscribe. Bye, everybody.